So this is Baruch here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and we're back for a second shir of the stories of the ARI HaKodesh. The last story we have to understand is that this is really held to be a very high level of these high level stories about what happened with the ARI, because the ARI is a very, very special person. So here's some more stories. Is one day as he sat praying in the synagogue, a man sat next to him. The rabbi turned and saw a book in his hand in which he had been held heavenly mysteries. Now let's see. The rabbi turned and he saw, they didn't say who was the rabbi. The rabbi turned, he said, and he saw a book in his hand in which he beheld. In other words, he saw heavenly mysteries. Now what does that mean? I don't know. After the prayer, the rabbi said to the man, "Tell me, what is written in this book?" The man answered, saying, "What shall I say, inasmuch as the Lord has withheld honor from me?" Now, what does that mean? He said, "For I am of the Marranos." Now, let's try to understand what the Marranos means. Marrano is a Spanish word for pig. One has to really understand what happened in the Inquisition. Actually, it's really called the expulsion, and then later the Inquisition. That the church inspired a certain kind of hatred towards the Jews. One of the words that was always attached to the Jews was possibly, they were called pigs. Now, who was called a pig and who wasn't? Well, it was never really directed that a person was actually a Jew, because after 1492, there were no Jews allowed in Spain anymore by penalty of death. So therefore, all the Jews that remained in Spain, they were converted. They became converted to Catholicism. But they were always cast aside, so to speak, or the population of Spain, all the aristocracy were suspicious of these people. Nonetheless, many of them were educated, wealthy, and had position in Spain. These people came to be known as Marranos, or chuetas. It's another word that is also used to these are different kinds of pigs. I don't really know that much about different kinds of pigs. But that's what the Jews were called. So this man was now talking, I think he was talking to the ARI. I'm not sure what's going on. Let's see what happened to this story. And he says, "What shall I say, inasmuch as the Lord hath withheld honor from me? I have no honor, for I am of the Marranos. Seeing that everyone prayed from a book in my embarrassment, I also took a book." He said, "But I don't know what's written inside of it." So the rabbi said to him, "In that case, sell me this book, and I will give you a prayer book." So you sell me this book, I'll give you a prayer book. Now, what's this all about? He then said, "Do I lack money that I should have to sell you this book? Rather ask your father-in-law to remit your taxes, the taxes on my merchandise, and I will give you the book." Now, it's a complicated little story here. Here's a man who was praying in the synagogue. I'm going to read it again. And a man sat next to him. So the rabbi turned. He saw there was a book in the hand of the man that was sitting next to him. And when the prayer was done, he started talking to the man. So the man says to him, he says, "I'm a Marrano. So I really don't have the honor to be able to really know." What's a Marrano means? A person who grew up as a Catholic even though he's Jewish. He doesn't know anything about Judaism. He knows very little. He may have idealized, and definitely many did, the Jews and the Torah, but didn't know it. Because in Spain at that time, nobody could know that you were actually Jewish. You had to completely divorce yourself from it. So seeing that everyone prayed from a book, he says, "In my embarrassment, I also took a book, but I know not what is written inside the book. I can't read it." So the rabbi said to him, "In that case, sell me this book, and I will give you a prayer book." Now, why would he do that? He had gotten a book. He picked up a book because he saw, I guess he must have bought a book someplace. So he wanted to go in the synagogue. He's a converso. We call these people conversos, people who were forced under circumstances to convert. But that, nonetheless, the generation or two in which not learning anything about Judaism and having to hide your Judaism made it very difficult for these people to know anything about it. Now, where were they when this took place? They were obviously in a place where there was not, the church was not hanging over their heads. They're in a synagogue, and we have to assume they're in the synagogue at the eastern part of the Turkish Empire, no, the eastern part in the east, and not in Portugal. So Portugal is something we will learn about from our history series, but I didn't bring the book with me right now. So in that case, sell me this book and I will give you a prayer book. So the man said back to him, he said, I got this book. Do I lack money that I should have to sell you this book? Rather, he says, now this is an interesting thing. He said, ask your father-in-law. Who's the father-in-law? Must be an important man. To remit the taxes of my merchandise. In other words, he had brought in some merchandise from, another part of the Mediterranean. I'm assuming they're in Egypt at this time. And I will give you the book. I'll have after money, I won't have to pay your father-in-law. As the rabbi was eager for the book, he entreated his father-in-law, who agreed to his request and obtained the book for him. In other words, he let the man off the hook, didn't have to pay the taxes on the merchandise, and the man gave him the book. The rabbi studied this book and the book of splendor, which is, he can translate as that's the book of the Zohar. The book of splendor, he's calling it the Zohar. So he started learning this with all his might while he fasted and afflicted himself. Now this is the rabbi. The rabbi studied the book of this man who was a Marano. Through these acts he merited that in dreams at night he would sometimes be told that his understanding of a passage of the Zohar was not correct. Again, at other times he would be told that he understood it correctly, but not in according with the meaning of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. In other words, he had a pshat, but that's not what Rabbi Shimon was trying to say. At long last, he was told that if he truly desired to understand the text, he must increase his self-affliction, fasting, so on and so forth. And he did. And when he saw that he was on the right path, he retired to the Nile region in Egypt for 6 years, and in holiness and purity occupied himself with study day and night. Now, what do we have up to here in this story? It's not an easy story to follow. The story is that a man was sitting next to this rabbi. Now, the rabbi, I'm understanding, is the ARI Kodesh. So a man is sitting next to him, and he has a book of mysticism in his hand. And the ARI asked him about the book, and he said, sell me the book. And the man refused. So he said, well, only under circumstances that you can get me a break of my taxes. So he says, okay, I shall talk to my father-in-law. Must have been an important person, the father-in-law. And he had some power. So therefore, they remitted the taxes, you got the book. And then he started studying the book, right? So here we are. So after a while, he was told to do more fasting, more self-affliction. So he says, and when he saw that he was on the right path, he retired to the Nile region in Egypt for 6 years. This is the ARI. And in holiness and purity occupied himself with study day and night. Thereby, he merited that each night his soul was raised up and asked to which heavenly academy it wished to ascend. So to the academy of Rabbi Eliezer the Great, or the academy of Rabbi Akiva, or to that of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And whatsoever his soul desired, there it was taken, and awesome mysteries were revealed to it. When morning came, he had not forgotten anything, and revealed this all to his disciples, to his students. Like I said, this is maybe an incomplete story. I know this story is all 100% complete. But whatever it is, this Marano, why would the Marano had bought a book? He said he bought the book so that he shouldn't look like he had no books. It doesn't say where he got the book from. Let me just read the words back again. So he said, one day as he sat praying in the synagogue, a man sat next to him. So we assume that this is talking about the ARI Kodesh. The rabbi turned and saw a book in the man's hand in which he beheld heavenly mysteries. So the man was holding a book of, I'm assuming, of the Zohar, some kind of an explanation. So after the prayer, the rabbi said to the man, tell me what is written in this book. So the rabbi, the ARI, asked the man what's in the book. The man answered, saying, what shall I say? Inasmuch as the Lord has withheld honor from me because he was unfortunately born a converso, or a Marrano. For I am from the Marranos, saying that everyone prayed from a book. In my embarrassment, I also took a book with me. So the question is where did this Marrano get this book? Where did the book come from? What are we talking about? What book did he find? I also took a book. So he says, I just took a book so that I shouldn't be embarrassed and come to the synagogue and not have a book. But I know not what's written inside of it, he said. In that case, he'd sell me the book, and I'll give you a prayer book. So then I'll give you a book that you can pray from. You give me that book. But he has to be sold. He said, sell me the book. Man went through the whole thing and needed a tax deal, and then he would give him the book. And they did it. And this became the offspring, or the beginning, of the limud of the Holy ARI, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria Ashkenazi.